The elegant restaurant glittered beneath the warm afternoon sun pouring through enormous glass windows, filling every corner with bright daylight and the sparkle of polished crystal. Wealthy executives laughed loudly around expensive tables while servers hurried between them with perfect smiles. No one noticed the exhausted elderly woman quietly entering through the front doors, her worn coat stained from years of hardship, her trembling hands clutching a tiny cloth purse. No one noticed, except one young waiter whose own life had taught him that kindness often mattered more than money. Within the next hour, one simple act of compassion would change his life forever. Before we begin, if you believe kindness always finds its way back, please like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Bright Hearts for more emotional stories that remind us humanity still exists. Rowan Mercer had spent the last 4 years rebuilding a life that had nearly collapsed. At 32, he was raising his 7-year-old son, Finn, completely alone after losing his wife to a sudden illness. Every morning began before sunrise. He prepared breakfast, walked Finn to school, then hurried across town to the luxurious Grand Willow restaurant, where he worked double shifts as one of the most respected waiters despite never complaining about the endless hours. His smile wasn't fake, it came from understanding pain. Every generous tip helped pay school fees, rent, groceries, and the small dreams he still carried for his son. Rowan often reminded himself that dignity wasn't measured by the clothes someone wore, but by how they treated those who could offer nothing in return. The restaurant had become especially busy that afternoon because an influential investment group had reserved the largest private dining area. Luxury cars lined the entrance, photographers occasionally snapped pictures, and managers insisted every detail be flawless. Rowan moved gracefully between tables, balancing trays with practiced precision while quietly encouraging younger staff members who seemed overwhelmed by the demanding guests. Just after noon, the front doors opened again. An elderly woman slowly stepped inside. Her silver hair had been tied into a loose bun, and her faded brown jacket looked decades old. Dust covered her shoes as though she had walked a long distance. She looked around uncertainly before approaching an empty table near the windows. Some guests immediately stared. Others whispered behind folded menus. A hostess hesitated, unsure whether the woman belonged in such an expensive establishment. Before anyone could embarrass her, Rowan approached with his usual warm smile. He welcomed her exactly as he welcomed every customer. The elderly woman introduced herself as Miriam Holloway. Her voice was gentle but tired. She admitted she hadn't eaten since the previous evening and quietly asked whether the restaurant served anything simple because she couldn't afford expensive meals. Rowan never glanced at her worn clothing. Instead, he recommended the restaurant's affordable lunch special and secretly arranged with the kitchen to prepare a larger portion while charging only for the basic meal. He even added fresh bread and soup from his own staff allowance. Miriam thanked him with eyes that glistened with gratitude. Unfortunately, not everyone shared Rowan's compassion. At the neighboring table sat several wealthy businessmen celebrating a successful corporate merger. Among them was Victor Langston, famous for his arrogance and cruel sense of humor. As soon as he noticed Miriam carefully eating her meal, he loudly questioned whether the restaurant had become a shelter. His friends burst into laughter. Another joke that someone should check whether she'd wandered in by mistake. The laughter echoed through the dining room. Many customers looked away, pretending not to hear. Miriam lowered her head, trying to disappear. Rowan felt something inside him tighten. Without raising his voice, he calmly walked toward Victor's table and politely reminded the group that every guest deserved respect. He explained that kindness cost nothing, and that humiliating someone revealed far more about the mocker than the person being mocked. His words were firm, respectful, and impossible to ignore. Victor sneered. He mocked Rowan for defending someone who couldn't even afford dessert. He waved several large bills in the air and declared that people like Rowan should remember their place instead of lecturing successful men. The dining room became painfully silent. Everyone waited to see what Rowan would do. Instead of accepting the insult, Rowan quietly placed the untouched money back onto Victor's table. He said he worked for tips, but never sold his principles. The words landed like thunder. Several diners quietly applauded. Victor's face reddened with embarrassment, but his pride refused to let him apologize. He gathered his companions and stormed out of the restaurant, complaining loudly about poor service while promising never to return. As the doors closed behind them, the room slowly relaxed again. Miriam looked at Rowan with tears running down her weathered cheeks. She confessed that no one had defended her in years. Since losing her husband, life had become unbearably lonely. She had sold nearly everything to cover medical bills before eventually moving into a modest retirement apartment. That afternoon, she had only wanted one peaceful meal to celebrate what would have been her wedding anniversary. Rowan listened without interrupting. When she finished eating, he quietly paid the remaining balance himself before telling her it had already been taken care of. Miriam insisted she could repay him someday. Rowan simply smiled. He told her the world became brighter whenever kindness was passed from one person to another. As Miriam slowly prepared to leave, a sleek black vehicle stopped outside the restaurant. Moments later, a professionally dressed woman hurried inside, her face filled with panic. The instant she spotted Miriam, relief flooded her expression. She embraced the elderly woman so tightly that both began crying. The restaurant staff watched in silence. The elegant woman introduced herself as Celeste Holloway. Few people recognized the name immediately, but the restaurant owner certainly did. His face turned pale. Celeste Holloway was one of the country's most respected entrepreneurs, founder of an international technology company worth billions. Newspapers frequently listed her among the nation's wealthiest business leaders, though she rarely appeared in public. She explained that her mother disliked luxury and often disappeared on long walks without telling anyone. Security teams had been searching all afternoon after losing track of her. A phone battery had died, leaving everyone worried. Then Miriam gently pointed toward Rowan. She quietly described everything that had happened. She explained how the young waiter had fed her with dignity, protected her from humiliation, and refused money offered without respect. As Celeste listened, tears filled her own eyes. She turned toward Rowan and thanked him in front of every customer. She admitted that although her company employed thousands of people, genuine character remained the rarest quality she'd ever encountered. The restaurant owner, who had witnessed everything from across the room, felt deeply ashamed for remaining silent while the elderly woman had been mocked. Several employees lowered their heads, realizing they too had done nothing until Rowan stepped forward. News of the incident spread quickly. One customer had quietly recorded part of Rowan defending Miriam. By evening, the video had reached millions online. People praised the waiter who valued dignity above wealth. Strangers donated toward Finn's education after learning Rowan was raising his son alone. Teachers, nurses, construction workers, students, and grandparents filled the comments with stories about moments when a single act of kindness had changed their own lives forever. A week later, Rowan received an invitation to visit Celeste's company headquarters. Believing she simply wished to thank him again, he arrived wearing his best suit, the same inexpensive one he'd worn to his wife's memorial years earlier. Instead, Celeste surprised him with something unimaginable. She offered Rowan a leadership position overseeing community partnerships for her charitable foundation. She explained that technical skills could be taught, but integrity could not. Someone who defended a stranger without expecting recognition possessed exactly the values her foundation needed. The salary exceeded anything Rowan had ever imagined. It included healthcare, flexible hours, educational support for Finn, and opportunities to build programs helping struggling families across the country. Rowan accepted with tears in his eyes. Months later, his life looked completely different. Finn attended an excellent school. Their small apartment became a warm family home filled with laughter again. Most importantly, Rowan continued visiting the Grand Willow restaurant every month, not as an employee, but as a guest. He always greeted every waiter by name, left generous tips, and quietly paid for meals belonging to elderly diners eating alone. Because he never forgot where he came from. Victor Langston eventually saw the viral video too. Watching millions admire the man he had publicly mocked forced him to confront an uncomfortable truth. Success had earned him wealth, but not respect. Quietly, and without publicity, he began supporting several local charities, later admitting that one ordinary waiter had taught him a lesson no business school ever could. Years passed. One sunny afternoon, Rowan and Finn visited Miriam at her peaceful countryside home. They shared lunch in the garden while children from a nearby community center laughed beneath blooming trees funded by Rowan's foundation. Miriam smiled as she watched them, knowing that one afternoon of courage had grown into countless acts of generosity, touching lives far beyond that restaurant. The greatest fortunes are not measured in bank accounts. They are measured in the number of hearts forever changed because someone chose compassion when cruelty seemed easier. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to Bright Hearts so together we can spread more stories that remind the world kindness still matters. Special request, before the story ends, comment below with one act of kindness you have received or one you promised to do for someone this week. As Rowan walked hand in hand with Finn beneath the bright afternoon sky, he realized the greatest gift he had ever given Miriam was never the meal or the defense. It was reminding her that she still mattered. And in return, she reminded him that the smallest act of kindness, offered with a sincere heart and expecting nothing back, can open doors no amount of wealth ever could. In a world that often rushes past the lonely and forgotten, compassion remains the one treasure that grows richer every time it is shared.